The police were everywhere, but the killer was closer than they knew. He was walking the same streets, passing the same gas lamps, blending into the same crowd, and every time London thought it had surrounded him, Jack the Ripper vanished. In 1888, London was the heart of the British Empire, a city of wealth, power, royalty, and progress. But beneath that golden image, another London existed, a London of hunger, a London of overcrowded rooms, a London where women slept in doorways because they could not afford a bed for the night. That London had a name, Whitechapel, and in the autumn of 1888, Whitechapel became a hunting ground. The streets were narrow, the air was heavy, fog wrapped itself around the buildings, gas lamps flickered weakly against the dark. Men came and went from lodging houses. Women searched for coins, shelter, and safety. But safety was hard to find, because somewhere in that darkness, a man was watching. No one knew his real name. No one knew his face. No one knew where he came from. But soon, the whole world would know the name attached to his crimes. Jack the Ripper. This is not just the story of a killer. It is the story of fear. The kind of fear that changes a city. The kind of fear that makes every footstep behind you sound dangerous. The kind of fear that makes ordinary streets feel cursed. And at the center of it all were 5 women whose names should never be forgotten. Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, Mary Jane Kelly. They were not legends. They were not just names in a police file. They were real women. They had families. They had families. They had pasts. They had struggles. And in 1888, they crossed paths with a man who would become one of the most terrifying mysteries in criminal history. The first of the 5 was Mary Ann Nichols, often called Polly. In the early hours of August 31st, 1888, she was walking through Whitechapel. She was tired. She needed money for a bed. The lodging houses did not offer mercy. No coins meant no room. No room meant the street. And on that cold morning, she ended up in Bucks Row, a quiet, dark street, the kind of place people passed without thinking. But before sunrise, Bucks Row became a crime scene. Polly Nichols was found lying on the ground. At first, it looked like she may have collapsed. Whitechapel had seen enough poverty and sickness for that to seem possible. But then the truth became clear. She had been murdered. The attack was brutal, fast, silent, and whoever had done it had disappeared before anyone could raise an alarm. The police began asking questions. Who had seen her? Who had heard anything? Who had been nearby? But the answers were weak, uncertain, fragments. There was no clear face, no clear witness, no clear trail. Just a woman dead in the street, and a killer who had walked away unseen. At first, London could pretend it was one terrible crime. A random act, a nightmare that would not repeat. But 8 days later, Whitechapel learned the truth. The nightmare had only begun. On September 8, 1888, Annie Chapman was found behind 29 Hanbury Street, a backyard, a place surrounded by people. Families lived nearby. Workers were already waking. The morning had begun. And still, the killer had entered that yard, attacked Annie Chapman, and escaped. Again, no one stopped him. Again, no one clearly saw him. Again, the violence suggested something more than ordinary murder. This was not a robbery. This was not a quarrel. This was not a crime committed in panic. This looked deliberate, controlled, terrifying. Now Whitechapel began to change. Women became afraid to walk alone. Men formed patrol groups. Police searched streets, lodging houses, pubs, and alleys. Rumors moved faster than facts. Some said the killer must be a butcher. Some said he must be a doctor. Some said he was a madman. Others believed he lived right there in Whitechapel, hiding among the same people who feared him. That idea was almost too frightening to accept, because it meant the killer was not some strange figure from far away. He could be the man standing beside you, the man drinking in the corner, the man asking for directions, the man whose face you would forget the moment he disappeared into the fog. Then, while the police struggled, the newspapers took hold of the story. Every murder became a headline. Every rumor became public fear. Every theory fed the imagination of a city already on edge. London wanted answers, but what it got was a name. A letter arrived at the Central News Agency. It was written in red ink. It mocked the police. It claimed responsibility for the killings. And it ended with a signature that would become known around the world. Jacktheripper. Was the letter truly from the killer? No one could prove it. Many letters sent during the case were believed to be hoaxes, but that did not matter to the public. The name was too powerful, too sharp, too unforgettable. Jacktheripper. It sounded less like a person and more like something that belonged to the darkness. From that moment, the killer was no longer just an unknown murderer. He had become a legend while the investigation was still happening. A faceless figure moving through Whitechapel like a ghost. Then came the night that would shake London even harder. September 30th, 1888. A night remembered as the double event. The first victim that night was Elizabeth Stride. She was found in Dutfield's yard. Her throat had been cut, but something about the scene was different. The attack did not look as complete as the previous murders. Some believed the killer may have been interrupted. Maybe someone entered the yard. Maybe he heard footsteps. Maybe a door opened. Maybe the darkness shifted at the wrong moment. And if he was interrupted, then he left before he was finished. But he did not go home. He did not stop, because less than an hour later, another woman was dead. Her name was Catherine Eddowes. She was found in Mitre Square. This was one of the most chilling parts of the case. Police were already alert. The city was already afraid. People were watching the streets. And still, the killer struck again. In the same night, within the same hour, then disappeared. Think about that. A man had killed in Whitechapel, possibly been interrupted, escaped, found another victim, killed again, and still managed to vanish before the police could catch him. That was the night London realized it was not simply dealing with violence. It was dealing with someone who knew how to move through fear. After the double event, panic spread through the East End. The police were under enormous pressure. The newspapers demanded answers. Residents demanded protection. Vigilance committees searched the streets. Every suspicious man became a possible suspect. Every bloodstain became a clue. Every knife became a threat. But in 1888, investigators did not have the tools we know today. No DNA testing, no CCTV, no phone records, no modern fingerprint databases. They had lanterns, witness statements, physical evidence, memory, instinct, and pressure. So much pressure. Witnesses gave descriptions, but they did not match clearly. Some remembered a man with a dark mustache. Some remembered a man wearing certain clothes. Some remembered someone foreign-looking. Some remembered nothing useful at all. And in a place as crowded as Whitechapel, that was a nightmare for the police. People came and went. constantly. Lodging houses were packed. Streets were busy at strange hours. Many residents distrusted the authorities. A man could arrive in one alley and disappear into another within seconds. Whitechapel was not just a location. It was a maze, and Jack the Ripper knew the maze. Then came another strange and disturbing part of the case. More letters, more messages, more claims. One postcard appeared after the double event. It seemed to mock the police again. It suggested the writer knew about the two murders. Again, no one could say for certain whether it came from the real killer, but the damage was done. The idea that Jack was writing to the public made him feel even closer, as if he was not only killing in the dark, but reading the newspapers by morning, watching the panic grow, enjoying the confusion. Then George Lusk, a local man involved in a vigilance committee, received a package. Inside was a letter. The message was cold and crude, and with it came something so disturbing that it became one of the most debated pieces of the entire case. A piece of human kidney. The writer claimed it had come from Catherine Eddowes. Was it real? Was it a cruel hoax? The truth has never been fully settled. But imagine what it did to the people of Whitechapel. Imagine trying to sleep after hearing that the killer might be sending body parts through the mail. Imagine stepping outside and wondering if the man beside you at the market was the same man the whole city feared. That was the power of Jack the Ripper. He turned uncertainty into terror. And then came the final and most horrifying murder of the canonical five, Mary Jane Kelly. She was younger than the others. She lived in a small room in Miller's Court. Unlike the earlier victims, she was not attacked in an open street or yard. She was indoors, behind a door, in a private room. But that room did not protect her. It may have given the killer more time. On November 9, 1888, Mary Jane Kelly was found dead. The scene was so terrible that even experienced officers were shaken. This was not the rushed work of a man afraid of being seen. This was the work of someone who had time, someone who had privacy, someone who did not hurry. And after it was over, he left. Again, no one stopped him. No one caught him. No one truly knew who had walked out of Miller's Court that morning. After Mary Jane Kelly, the murders most strongly linked to Jack the Ripper seemed to stop. And that is one of the strangest parts of the mystery. Why did he stop? Did he die? Was he arrested for something else? Was he locked away in an asylum? Did he leave London? Did he become ill? Did he simply decide that the terror he created was enough? No one knows. That silence may be even more frightening than the murders themselves. Because there was no ending, no final chase, no confession, no courtroom, no face revealed to the public. Just an empty space where the answer should be. Over the years, many suspects have been named. Aaron Kosminski, Montague John Druitt, Michael Ostrog, doctors, butchers, sailors, criminals, men who lived near Whitechapel, men who passed through Whitechapel, men named by police officials, men named by writers long after the crimes. Some theories sound possible, some sound wild, some are built on evidence, others are built on imagination. But every suspect has a weakness. Every theory has a crack. Every answer creates another question. That is why the case has lasted for more than a century, because Jack the Ripper is not just a murder case. He is an unsolved wound in history. But the real story should not belong only to him. It should belong to the women. Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, Mary Jane Kelly. For too long, their lives were pushed behind the killer's name. But each of them had a story before Whitechapel made them famous for the worst reason. They struggled with poverty. They faced loss. They lived in a world where poor women had very little protection. They were vulnerable not because they were weak, but because society had left them exposed. The horror of Jack the Ripper is not only what he did, it is also where he did it, in a place where many people were already fighting to survive. Whitechapel was full of people the powerful preferred not to see. People without money, people without comfort, people without safety, women who had to walk at night because hunger gave them no choice, women who had to choose between danger and sleeping in the cold. The Ripper did not create that suffering, but he used it. He moved through it. He found victims in the parts of London that polite society tried to ignore. And when the killings began, the world finally looked at Whitechapel. But it looked because of the killer, not because of the living. That is part of why this case still feels so disturbing. Because Jack the Ripper was never truly separated from the city around him. He belonged to the fog, to the alleys, to the gaslight, to the overcrowded rooms, to the desperate silence of women walking alone before sunrise. He became a symbol of everything hidden beneath Victorian London's polished surface, a reminder that progress can exist beside cruelty, that wealth can stand beside hunger, that a city can be powerful and still fail to protect its most vulnerable people. And yet, after all the books, all the theories, all the investigations, the same questions remain. Who was he? How did he escape? Why did he stop? Did anyone know him? Did anyone suspect him and stay silent? Did he return home after each murder and act normal? Did he sit at a table? Did he wash his hands? Did he speak to neighbors? Did he read the newspapers and watch his name grow larger than the truth? The most frightening possibility is not that Jack the Ripper looked like a monster. It is that he may have looked ordinary. So ordinary that people passed him every day. So ordinary that no one remembered him clearly. So ordinary that history lost his face forever. Today, Whitechapel is no longer the same place it was in 1888. The old streets have changed. Buildings have disappeared. Names have been replaced. The fog is no longer what it was, but the story remains. Because some mysteries do not fade, they echo. Jack the Ripper was never caught. No prison held him. No court judged him. No confirmed photograph revealed him. No final answer closed the case. He entered history through violence and escaped through silence. And that is why his name still carries fear. Not because he was the only killer in history, not because he was the deadliest, but because he was never unmasked. He became the shadow every investigator chased and never reached. The face hidden behind every theory, the unknown man at the edge of the gaslight, the killer who turned Whitechapel into a nightmare and then disappeared. So when you hear the name Jack the Ripper, remember what it really means. It means 5 women whose lives mattered. It means a city gripped by fear. It means police running through fog with no clear suspect. It means letters, rumors, panic, and unanswered questions. It means a man who may have stood in plain sight while the world searched for him. The scariest monsters are not always found in abandoned houses or graveyards. Sometimes they walk crowded streets. Sometimes they speak politely. Sometimes they pass under gas lamps, with blood still hidden from view. Sometimes they become history because no one ever learns their name. And somewhere in the darkness of Whitechapel, more than a century ago, one of those monsters walked away. No face, no capture, no confession, only a name: Jack the Ripper, the faceless killer of Whitechapel, and the mystery that still refuses to die.